You mentioned that you're trying not to color her decision-making capabilities with politics. I'm sorry. Way too many of people's decision-making capabilities are colored by politics. So every effort that you make is really nice, but unfortunately, way too much of our decision making has been tainted by politics and by the media. I mean, we're not making logical decisions anymore. We're making emotional decisions.
I guess that includes you too.
Absolutely. But we're making a lot more illogical decisions than we used to make. We used to really be dependent upon the facts when we were making decisions, and we weren't as influenced. Well, I shouldn't say we weren't. We were influenced, but it just seems that we are so much more influenced by a voice than a fact these days.
Welcome to Peter and Phil's Courageous Conversations, a podcast addressing race relations and social issues in hopes that you'll be inspired to do the same. Now, let's begin our conversation with your hosts, Dr. Peter Weinstein and Dr. Philip Nelson.
And I'm expressing dismay because of the realization that I thought we could bind all Americans through patriotism.
You would think so, as a common belief.
Yes, you would
But
think so. But we've never dealt with racism. And that has been the preeminent divider. And to our detriment, those who have been radicalized believe that being the pre-colonial patriot is synonymous with being a hero. But if my drive is racism, then I'm not trying to recapture American values or constitutional values. I'm trying to create another type of country. Probably the most impactful example is when Obama won his first election and Rush Limbaugh says, I want him to fail. I've never heard anybody say they wanted their president to fail before. And when McConnell says we're going to make him a one-term president, right after Rush Limbaugh says, I want him to fail, I didn't see that statement as a political statement. Just prior to that, the Democrats worked with Reagan. They accepted that they lost the election, and they still tried to achieve progress in governing until they could win back the White House. And I'm sure they wanted Reagan to be a one-term president too.
they just didn't say it.
They didn't say it because they didn't think they had to sacrifice progress at all costs in order to get it done. Clinton won. There was no gnashing of teeth, wondering how long you're going to be there. They tried to stop him. They tried to get him out of office, but there was no open goal to undermine his presidency other than to say, I disagree with you and I'm not voting for that. And then we move forward to just recently, and Fox News spends a whole week denigrating the Olympics, our Olympic team, and cross issues. The basketball team loses their first game and suddenly they're not Americans. They're weak.
Yeah.
Simone Biles has the twisties. I want to see somebody else jump off a 4-inch wide beam backwards and land on their feet and then get vertigo and try it again. I don't understand how you can attack those issues except for the fact that they attack the Black athletes.
The interesting part of your conversation, which is it goes back to 2008, is if I'm hearing you correctly, Obama's election was considered unpatriotic by Rush Limbaugh and McConnell and others. And so they made it their target to return patriotism to the White House. And that we have continued since then to create a greater divide based upon race more than anything else. To me, the definition of patriotism has been redefined to you have to believe in what I believe, and if that means going against the current government, then that's patriotism. Otherwise, you're unpatriotic. some of the efforts to support the election of 2020 are unpatriotic because the election was unfair, or whatever the terminology that they're using. And of course, the efforts to make change, at least in the voting rights rules and regs, are very much racially based. So in listening to you, it does make sense that this change in the focus from a patriotic standpoint is a racially based discussion. And it goes back to the concerns going forward of pluralism. It goes back to the building of the wall to keep people out. It goes back to the unwillingness to allow Muslims and others to come in. I mean, there's a concerted and overt racism, the likes of which I haven't seen in my lifetime, and I can't think that has existed since slavery.
Well, that's an astounding statement that you just made. You haven't seen in your lifetime, because it has definitely been present in your
Right.
lifetime. And the fact that you haven't seen it or recognized it is more of a reflection of your privilege than the actual status of our country, because your lifetime is the same as mine.
Right.
And I endured it while you weren't recognizing it. But I endured it when you shouldn't be recognizing it, because you were a child at that time.
Right.
The changes have been cosmetic. And the problem with English is that when I make statements like that, it sounds as if there hasn't been any. And there have been substantial changes. But there are legislative changes, there are enforcement changes, there are conceptual changes, and there are changes in beliefs and values. And the real substantive changes must align with beliefs and values. And if they don't change, if people inherently believe that the color of my skin determines the value of my life, then legislative changes are superficial. Enforcement changes are superficial. Everything that we do becomes superficial because we will always be fighting the clash of values. And we're talking about a value clash here. I asked the question about patriotism because after hearing that week of Fox pundits repudiate the Olympic team, these people have committed 4 years in preparation for this competition. And they're proud to represent our country. And to see an organization like Fox News celebrate any defeat. By the way, everybody that they celebrated, that they denigrated, ended up getting a medal in the end. And yet to use it as examples of weakness or corruption or whatever. It's that redefinition that really bothered me. I came up with, my initial response was they were fake patriots.
Well, wouldn't you even consider Fox to be unpatriotic?
I would.
Because
absolutely. But they were doing this under the guise of patriotism. That's
my point, is that we have this double standard for patriotism. There's what one side believes, and there's what another side believes is patriotic. And
the first time the Americans lost a basketball game, which we think this is our game, or the first time the Americans lost a baseball game to the Japanese.
Right.
Our goal was to get better.
What do you think their goal was? The Japanese goal?
Yeah,
the Russians goal?
But my point was, our response wasn't, oh, our team sucks. Do you understand what I'm saying? We were disappointed. It's kind of like when the first time we won the gold in hockey against the Russians.
Right.
Our view of Russia then was, oh my God, they got to go back to Russia, having lost to the United States. I wonder what's going to happen to them. You didn't think that way when American athletes didn't win the gold in everything. You didn't think that way when the American athletes lost their first gold in basketball. Nobody expected that team to be attacked or imprisoned or criticized. I mean, they were criticized, but not from a national, this is what's wrong with our society perspective. There was no comment related to us getting soft or being demented because we're woke, or not being patriotic because we kneel during the national anthem. And first of all, that comment that they made about basketball players kneeling during the national anthem, they got the wrong sport.
That's true.
And to make that comparison shows how desperate they were to try to create this new narrative. And then secondly, even in football, when that San Francisco quarterback decided to kneel, he borrowed that act. And all he was saying was, I've lost compatriots unjustly when they've been arrested. And he brought attention to the number of people that were dying unnecessarily just because they're getting pulled over.
The unfortunate thing that we're dealing with is that we're letting Fox News and similar platforms have credibility. And they really don't deserve to have that level of credibility. But because they are a media and they have a lot of followers, they are the megaphone for that group. Except when I'm at the gym and the TV is on, I don't watch Fox because it tends to incite in me anger for their lack of patriotism. Their efforts are to be disruptive in their messaging. In this case, whether it is racism or politics or whatever the case may be. I mean, the fact that we give them any voice at all, to me, they haven't earned it. They don't deserve it. Unfortunately, they're getting more of it than they deserve.
First of all, you definitely have a bias.
Yeah, well,
okay,
that.
That goes without saying. But in this democracy, I don't know what you mean when you say that they haven't earned the right to be legitimate. I didn't know that the media had to earn anything. I understand your frustration. I share it, but I protect their right to speak it.
Well, I'm not denying their right. I'm just denying I'm making my choices.
Yes, you are. But you're also saying that they don't deserve the right to express whatever they express. I don't like it. It further requires an educated electorate to determine whether they're right or not. Not right, excuse me, to determine whether they're to be believed or followed or not. And that's the danger of an inclusive democracy. But I'm not going to take the same position that they're taking about who's going to count the votes in Georgia.
I want to take two words: educated electorate, because an educated electorate is the group of people who ultimately makes decisions in a democracy. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, everybody makes decisions in a democracy.
You're correct, because I'm limiting it to the educated electorate, and there is a group of uneducated.
There is a population of variably educated citizens.
Okay. So through whatever platform there may be, each of these citizens is choosing to make a decision based upon what they're hearing.
Correct.
And when I used the term deserve earlier, it was more like they haven't earned, in my spectrum, my realm, they haven't earned the respect that would give me the willingness to listen to what they have to say.
I understood.
It wasn't a global deserve, it was a personal deserve.
Okay.
The concept of an electorate is really interesting, because if we look at the responsibility of however many voting Americans we have, maybe the responsibility is for us as people to educate them and make them an educated electorate based upon facts and information.
Well, I definitely believe that our country is better off, has achieved what it has achieved because we have educated the majority of our populace. And as a result, we have made better decisions, collective decisions. However, technological and social development has resulted in some psychological and communication challenges. And I don't feel that I know the answer. You know, everybody got the same news in the 60s. There were only 3 channels on TV. Before that, it was the radio. And there wasn't a spectrum of offers here. There were 1 to maybe 6 channels on the radio. There were 3 major channels in TV. Then there was a community channel that developed. So your sources of the news, even if it wasn't scripted, and that's questionable too, because certain things you couldn't say on TV. We did have monitors to protect the Christian values of America.
But the news then was more fact-based. And
well, I don't know about that, but there was definitely less opinion.
That's where I was
expressed.
Headed. Yeah, it may have been censored, but the facts are being censored. Now we don't get the facts because we're so buried in opinion.
Yeah, but we do get the facts. We get the facts. We just can't tell the difference between facts and opinion.
Yes. And that has contributed a lot to this growing chasm, depending upon which channel you were raised watching or which religious icon you were raised listening to, or whatever the case may be. And again, it's almost like living in 2 separate countries right now.
I had a conversation yesterday to show you how difficult it is to verify facts. I was having a conversation yesterday at work about classes that started. We have students back. I have faculty that are extremely worried about the variant, and they don't want to come in, and unless I give them an ironclad guarantee that I'm going to protect them, that I've measured the ventilation in every room that we're going to be in. I got the right filters on the air conditioner, and just in case that I drill a hole in the window so I can put an extra fan in each room, and make sure everybody wears a mask, and make sure everybody's vaccinated. And on top of that, do testing. And anyway, my approach has been mitigation of risk rather than, I cannot control risk. I cannot eliminate risk, but I can reduce risk. And at some point, you have to come out of the cave. But we were having a conversation about some of the methods and actions that we've taken. And one of the employees said that she had learned that her doctor told her that half of the people who were in the hospital, in a particular hospital, were vaccinated. And I immediately almost laughed at that and said, no, are you kidding me? And I walked off, and then realized I had no basis to dismiss that. But I was worried twofold. My first was, who says that a hospital couldn't have half and half? I mean, statistical chance says that's possible. It doesn't change the statistics for the nation, or even for a reason, or even for the city that hospital might be in. But it does change how somebody might make a decision. And this individual happens not to be vaccinated.
Well, it goes with this whole concept that perception is reality.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's what and then it goes back to the movie from the 80s, I believe, Reality Sucks.
So you got a medical professional telling a layperson that half the people I'm treating for COVID are vaccinated.
Yeah. And
so this person who doesn't want to get vaccinated because she doesn't trust the vaccine is saying, so why should I get vaccinated?
Let's take it a step further back. What is the real reason she doesn't want to get vaccinated? Because right now, as well as I do, that many reasons people are not getting vaccinated has nothing to do with the vaccination and everything to do with the voices of the news and politics.
Well, I believe that has some influence, but I have talked to this individual. And again, I have to make sure that I don't color her decision-making capability with her politics.
Right.
And she has claimed that she has real concerns about the vaccine. And she knows the numbers, she knows the data, she adds it up differently.
You mentioned that you're trying not to color her decision-making capabilities with politics. I'm sorry, way too many of people's decision-making capabilities are colored by politics. So every effort that you make is really nice, but unfortunately, way too much of our decision-making has been tainted by politics and by the media. I mean, we're not making logical decisions anymore. We're making emotional decisions.
I guess that includes you too.
Absolutely. But we're making a lot more illogical decisions than we used to make. We used to really be dependent upon the facts when we were making decisions, and we weren't as influenced. Well, I shouldn't say we weren't. We were influenced, but it just seems that we are so much more influenced by a voice than a fact these days.
I'm sure you're right, but I can't make that judgment on
No,
this
I know.
individual. That's
I
all I'm
know.
saying. I recognize the possibility. I'm just
Mhm.
saying I don't know. And I respect her decision in many other areas that in some ways have just as much political influence.
Right.
But I just think it goes back to our proclivity to oversimplify problems sometimes.
You had talked earlier about that we need to change beliefs to truly make long-term change. Maybe that's a
Yes.
paraphrase. Did I capture that
Yeah,
before?
that we need, yeah, well, we need to realign our values and beliefs. Yes.
Right. And it goes back to the quote from I Have a Dream. I have a dream that my four little children one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, by the content, but by the content of their character. So we need to take that sentence and focus on it.
Yeah.
How do we get people to focus on content of character way beyond color of skin?
I don't know. I guess I do, but it goes back to there's one commonality among all of our cultures, and that's religion. And religion tends to attempt to bring out the best in all of us. You know, part of my dismay are the veils that we have put in our argument. When we started this discussion on patriotism, I was expressing my recent disgust that people were actually they were using patriotism to attack athletes. And they were using a skewed version of patriotism to attack athletes. And that what they were doing wasn't patriotic at all. It was racist.
Mm-hmm.
And it was horrifying and diabolical and sinister that they would use patriotism to promote their racist views, and that they would attack and paint people that they didn't like or whose lifestyles they didn't like. They attacked the soccer team because of their sexual choices and made them un-American. And it was a uniform message. It didn't just come from Fox broadcasting system. Trump was saying the same thing on the stump.
Well, can you separate the two?
You should, but of course not. They clearly got together and wrote the script. But it's not out of love. We're okay with who we are okay with, and everybody else is the enemy. Until we can open our hearts and eyes, then it's just going to be a fight.
It's been a fight since Jesse Owens. It's been a fight since the 1968 Olympics when the Black athletes protested there. It continues to be a fight. It's a fight for Henry Aaron to become the home run king after he hit his 715th because he was Black and he wasn't Babe Ruth. You know, we continue to deal with this. And you're right. I mean, there shouldn't be race and patriotism, but we have inculcated race and patriotism.
I don't think we have. I actually think they have absconded with patriotism. They're still using it as a veil. That week of bombastic attacks on our Olympic team,
it was a distraction. It was an overt effort on the part of the conservative media to distract people away from the positives that the Olympics bring back to the anti-vaxxers, back to the autocracy and oligarchy that they're trying to come with. They are demeaning it so it comes back to what their focus needs to be. It was just the classic magician distracting people from what people actually see to what they want you to believe.
I agree. But what was offensive was the venom and the fact that it originated from a position of hatred. They offered no suggestions, no solutions. They simply criticized. They simply used the opportunity to suggest the denigration and degeneration of American society and to place the blame on a group of people and to wallow in negativity.
Well, I fully concur with what you're talking about with that respect. But as I glance at Fox News at the gym, all I see is them finding small positives on the left side that they can twist into awful things on the right side, whether it's mask mandates, whether it's vaccination mandates, whether it's just a misstep or a misspoke. There is a concerted effort to distract away from anything good that hasn't been led by the Trumpophiles. So it's just it has become a politicized reporting of what they want to use to manipulate people. I mean, it's a 1984 Brave New World political effort to manipulate people's beliefs, and based upon the way things are looking, I don't see it going away in the near future.
Well, me neither, because Fox isn't going away in the near future.
Yeah, CNN and MSNBC aren't going to turn the other cheek either. So, it's on all sides right now. It's just, some of it is just so distressingly distracting that it had us talk about it for an hour.
How about that?
So they won.
Nah, we talked about it for an hour.
Yeah.
I don't think talking about it means that they won. I mean, as a matter of fact, I think that's a threat. It's a counter threat. The fact that we are talking about it's at least recognition.
All right. Well, your glass is half full today.
Really?
Because I looked at it as a threat, which would I perceive it to be would be half empty. So.
Thank you for joining us for another courageous conversation. Be sure to follow us and check back next week for more.